All right. I'm going to hand it off to another one of our aftercare partners, Aaron Crady with the TCA. And actually, before that, I'm going to do one not quite as fun thing. We've got a couple door prizes. The first one's going to be from the TAA. We'll be sending those out, and we'll be choosing from all of the people who signed up, both virtually and in person. This is going to be a very scientific way to do this. I'm just going to point to it. Let's see. Michelle Michael from Emerald Pines Farm. So we will get you your information to the TAA, and I'm not sure if she's virtual or in person. My guess is virtual. So we'll get you your door prize, and congratulations. And now I will hand this over to Aaron Crady for our next speaker.
Hello, everyone. There we go. Thank you for being here. As Jen mentioned, my name's Erin Crady. I'm the Executive Director of Thoroughbred Charities of America. And founded in 1990, TCA is a grant-making organization. We provide grants to approved organizations working in thoroughbred aftercare, as well as helping backstretch and farm workers provide health and human services for that population. TCA, of course, we are a nonprofit organization, so we experienced many of the interesting pivots, if you will, last year and into this year when it comes to fundraising. So here to talk more about that is our next speaker, Jessica Coleman Hastings, and she's going to share with us how the pandemic has changed the face of fundraising. And as nonprofits, we know it has forced quite some change. But Jessica brings 23 years of development experience to the nonprofit and education sectors. Her projects have drawn upon a wide range of experience, including small-scale feasibility studies, strategy and implementation for development programs, program strategy and analysis, board and staff training and engagement, and writing proposals for individual donor prospects. As principal and sole owner of Coleman Hastings Advancement, Jessica works directly with her clients. She holds a BA from Center College and a master's degree from Vanderbilt. So please welcome Jessica.
It's really hard for me to sit down and sit still. So if you see me antsy, like I want to get up and move, that's what this is. So thank you all for having me here. I didn't do a PowerPoint. I just wanted to have kind of a conversation here, but the topic is how the pandemic has changed the face of fundraising in the short and the long term. So in order to move forward in this, I'd like to know a little more about you guys. So first of all, does anyone have the primary responsibility of fundraising for your organization? Okay. Everyone, okay. So how many people have a development staff that works for you? One person. Okay. Everyone laughs. Okay. How about development is other duties as assigned, and you're running the mission of your organization, or, okay, there we go. So development, okay. So development and fundraising, it's hard to put that at the forefront when you are managing your operations and you're keeping activities going on and you're focused on the mission. So I just want to be encouraging to you that you can do fundraising and manage everything that you need to do on site or with your organization. So, okay, now another question. Who has a big annual fundraising event? Anybody? Okay, we've got a few hands. All right. Did those happen in 2020? Virtually? Okay. How about you guys over here? Didn't happen, did happen. Okay, I've seen the same thing across the board, across the subsectors of nonprofits. Some had them, some didn't. So, okay, in which organization, if you want to answer, if you don't, that's fine too. When is this the primary source of your revenue, these annual events? Nobody? One? Okay, all right. Okay, so that gives me a little idea of where everybody is. Okay, This is the part to consider as your working session. Okay, you can make mental notes or in your phone or whatever. I'll never think you're texting. I'll just think you're taking notes on this presentation. So, okay, take a second right now and think about what your single most impactful story is from the pandemic. We're still in it, right? But from, let's say, March 2020 to present, what's the most impactful story you've had? And just kind of make a little note, mental note, jot it down, maybe write a couple of words down. Maybe something completely different happened. Maybe you were able to continue moving forward exactly as you were in the past. That would be unique, but maybe you were. Okay, now that you've got that in your mind, think about what program did you have to change to still be mission focused since March 2020? Okay. And then what have you heard from your board members or your volunteers or those who benefit from your mission? What kind of feedback have you gotten from them? Positive, negative, or otherwise? Just jot that down. This is all to create kind of a story of maybe and hopefully something that can be uplifting for you during this time that's really difficult. Okay, and now's the time to be really honest, and feel free to jump in and speak if you want to, or keep it to yourself. Depends on how open you want to be. But what is the one part of your development program that you did not miss during the pandemic thus far? And I'm going to tell you what I've heard from other subsectors. A lot of people don't like planning development events. They don't like planning a gala. They don't like planning luncheons. And I'm going to tell you, that was not my favorite part of my job when I was in with one organization before I started consulting. So it's okay if you love that. Some people don't. And I've seen some organizations completely move away from those galas now, looking beyond the pandemic. So let me give you a few stats before we go on. And I'm not going to, make your head go crazy with numbers, because it's really hard to sit and listen to numbers. But according to Giving USA, well, let me ask first, did you expect good news or bad news when it came to fundraising between 2019 and 2020? Who expected good news?
Is this a question like
Pre-pandemic, we'll just say pre-pandemic, pandemic to present. Who expected good? Okay. Pre-pandemic good, okay. This is gonna be hopefully really encouraging for you. According to Giving USA is kind of the report that we in development live and die by, because it gives quantitative research for decades back of philanthropy in the US. So according to Giving USA, and I'm going to look down at my notes, giving was up 5.1% in 2020 over 2019. And you might think, well, yes, because people were giving to human services, but it was up in every category except for from corporations. And looking at the subsectors, and there are about probably 8 or 9 maybe subsectors, animals and environment was up 11.6%. And you all may have heard this already. I apologize if you're hearing duplicate stats, but I thought that was staggering. Only one subsector was down, and that was arts and humanities. All the rest of the subsectors in the nonprofit world were up. That was very encouraging to me and a little surprising, to be honest. So also, I look at a few different sources, and IUPUI, which the Lilly School of Philanthropy, some of you all have heard, and the Wharton Business School did a dual research, and they expect, according to their research, for philanthropic contributions to be up in 21 and in 2022. So that's encouraging for our field as well. But to qualify that, there are lots of factors at stake, right? We all know this. The pandemic could move on. There could be another variant. I hope not, but there could be another variant that comes out. We're all waiting for a vaccine for children. We don't know what the market is going to look like by the end of the year. Unemployment, we don't know. We have midterm elections coming soon. So we have legislation that's being considered, both on the state and national level. So a lot of factors are coming into play. So the IUPUI Wharton study was positive, but have to qualify it and say we don't know for sure. Okay, now that we're through the numbers. On my way over, I realized that if I just shifted the order one way, I could make a word, rats. So rats is what we're going to look at. It's unattractive, but the first thing, I'm going to give you 4 ways that fundraising may be changing. One is to rethink events. So that's the R, rethink your events. Will people want to shake hands, hug, go and have past appetizers, plated meals, sit at a start line for a race, marathon, half marathon? Or will people crave that interaction again? I don't know about you all, but I went to my first event about a month ago. It was really nice to be out and seeing people, but it was a different interaction. Nobody's shaking hands, everybody's staying distant. So those are all considerations of your future events. I'm not advocating start or stop events. It all depends on what you do, but it is a good time to take a look and see what your return on investment is. I serve on a panel every other month for the Kentucky Nonprofit Network. It's been really interesting to hear about nonprofit organizations in Kentucky and how they've shifted from, oh, thank goodness we don't have to have this race anymore. We can do something else now. And it's like this burden lifted. But those are organizations sometimes that they were ready to look at changing, and they had the opportunity now to do that. But how, if you are dependent upon this revenue, how can you replace it? And of course, that's the big question too. Okay, the second, so we've done rethink events. The next one is the A, which is ask. The biggest mistake that nonprofit organizations make is not asking during times like this. We saw it after 9/11, we saw it during and after the recession, and now we're seeing it after or in the midst of the pandemic. People are not asking. The ones who do are continuing to be successful. The nonprofits that sit back and say, oh, it's a bad time, I know that people are going through a hard time, I'm not going to ask them for money, that's going to be tough, because it's kind of making an assumption about your donors. So just don't make an assumption, right, on behalf of your donors, because they may want to. This may make them even more committed to you because they know that times are hard and you may lose donors. So that's something to consider. And if you haven't asked thus far, that's okay. Don't look back, look forward. People are closing gifts now. And it's really interesting to see another shocking fact that I've witnessed is that people are closing major gifts on Zoom or on other web conferencing. They're getting visits with people, with individuals, and I'm talking mainly about individuals. They're getting gifts from individuals, they're getting appointments from individuals who may not have seen them before, because it's so easy to flip on your computer, to be out and about, to grab your phone and just meet with someone. Whereas in the past, if you were asking to go to their house, go to their office or go somewhere where they're out on the farm to meet with them, they may not. So that's been an interesting shift, that people are willing to make gifts on Zoom or on other web conferencing. And we know that some people don't have time. They don't want to make the time. But I encourage you to try to make the time, because sometimes on that Zoom call, your 15 minutes with them may be more productive than an hour with them in person. So just encourage you to do that. Okay, the third one, the T. So we're rethinking events, we're asking, and then the T is to talk about planned giving. How many of your organizations have planned giving programs? Okay. So we're talking about opportunities for people to give by will, bequest, living trust, then looking more complex into charitable gift annuities, charitable remainder trusts, charitable annuity trusts, life insurance policies. You can go on and on and on. But it's counterintuitive, right? That right now we would want to talk with individuals about making a planned gift. People are thinking about this very unfortunate time that we're living in. And it's hard to find a single person that's not been affected by COVID in some way or form. That's just where we are right now. But according to the National Council on Planned Giving, which is our go-to for stats of this nature, the reported nonprofit, the nonprofits that came in and reported, bequests were up 62% over 2019 in 2020. And why is that? Because people who have not made a will in the past are taking care of it. And so the nonprofit organizations that are engaging in discussions from a posture of empathy about planned giving may become part of someone's estate when they pass. It's better to do this in person, but there are organizations, there are services out there, I should say, that provide information that's kind of like a favor to donors. You can go, and I'm happy to give you names of organizations, but you can go to, say, someone like the Sharp Group and order brochures that say 10 items to consider when you're putting together your will. And it's not saying leave our organization in your estate plans. It's really offering a favor to people on your mailing list, saying here are some items to consider. And just in offering that favor to your individuals in your database who may fit that criteria of being at the right age to be considering making a will, you're offering a favor, and then kind of secondarily, you may be introducing the thought that they could leave your organization in their estate. Okay, so rethink events, ask, talk about planned giving, and here's the S, stay updated on tax law and CARES. If you're like me, I like to read things like this, but it doesn't take very long before it starts floating over my head a little bit. So I have to talk to people I know who are in the legal field, who are in the finance industry, who can say, okay, explain this to me. What exactly does this mean? So the National Council on Nonprofits, the Indiana University and Purdue University, the Lilly School on Philanthropy, and the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and if you have a local nonprofit network in Kentucky, we have the Kentucky Nonprofit Network. Those are all good sources where people who have that knowledge can bring it to the level that you need to be. Now, maybe some of you all are attorneys or in the tax field. That's great. You know all about this and you could do the presentation on it. But those are the go-to sources that I go to. And the giving, normally we don't talk about giving because of tax benefits as a reason why people give to an organization. They give because they believe in your mission. They give because they've been involved, that they're invested, that somehow you've made an impact on their life. But now there are some tax implications that people are thinking about. When you're talking about major donors, you're looking at a situation where people can give 100% of their adjusted gross income, 100% now, to a nonprofit with the tax benefits. Prior to 2017, prior to the CARES Act, it was 60% of their adjusted gross income. So your higher socioeconomic level donors may have that as their option for giving. This is something you may bring up to them, and then they would want to talk to their accountant or their attorney, but still something to keep in your mind. This is also applies to a charitable IRA. So you have people who are 70 and a half and older, and they have an IRA and they don't need it. So what can they do? Instead of taking the money themselves, and it would be taxed, they can not touch it at all and designate your organization as a beneficiary. No tax for them, benefit for you all. They didn't need the money anyway. So I'm rolling through a lot of these, and I have to actually go back and look through them myself to keep everything straight. And then when you're looking at your donors who are faithful annual donors, this year, as in the past, as in last year with the CARES Act, they renewed and some of you maybe all of you have heard of this, an above the line deduction. If you're single and you are filing and you are not itemizing, you can still deduct up to $300. If you are married filing jointly, it would be up to $600. And that is if you're not itemizing. This may come into play with the people who are giving annually to you, and maybe they're giving 25, 50, 75, or several hundred, but this may come into play with them as they consider making a year-end gift. There are some implications, tax implications for foundations, and that is way above my pay grade. I am not able to comment on that, but you can talk to people to find out what the tax implications are out there with foundations. So let me wrap up. So we talked about rethink events, ask, talk about planned giving, and stay updated on legislation. So let's go back to those early notes, those mental notes that you took. You could forget everything I said and go back and just say, what are my stories? Why do people invest in me? Because I can talk all day about all these mechanics, but your stories are what make an impact. Your stories are what people cause you to, who want to invest. Your stories that are new to them, those are what people are going to say, yes, I want to give back. I want to keep giving, and maybe I want to even give more. So that's all I have, Jen. That's all I have, Aaron. Are there any questions?
I wouldn't say that's all you have. I think that was a whole lot of really good information. I know Aaron has a question. I do too. Maybe other people do, so we'll line them up.
I hope I can answer.
I was just kind of wondering about direct mail solicitation versus digital fundraising. With the pandemic, have you seen kind of on a national level any changes there? More of a pivot to virtual for fundraising, for straight fundraising, aside from events, or has direct mail kind of remained the same, and any metrics on that?
You know what? That really depends on the subsector. The age of your database. Older folks are still going to tend to give by direct mail. Some databases are sophisticated and have lots of email addresses. If they do, then try. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is try to send email appeals to people. But I would caution anyone to say shift to all electronic or shift to all just direct mail, because your email addresses may not be good, and you don't want to let those people slip through the cracks if they've been regular donors. So that is not a direct answer to your question. But I would look at your database and see what you have. I work with one organization, and they are in a position where they don't have many email addresses, and of the ones they have, they don't know if they're good. So they were hesitant to move too much into the digital direction. They did participate in a couple of the giving days, but honestly, that was more just to get their name out there and to let people, it was more informative than it was expecting any electronic, any gifts back. Another organization I work with, they have a really good database, a really good list of emails. So they've shifted, I'd say about half of their appeals to electronic, because they've been able to, and they've seen some increase in gifts. But as far as a national trend, don't have that answer for you. No.
The question I had was a subject that you touched on, planned giving. And you had some really good advice about, the companies that people can reach out to try to start a planned giving program. Our board chair is over here, Carolyn, and she's been kind of championing starting that for the RRP over the last 2 years. Can you give us any advice or tips on an organization starting a planned giving program from the ground up?
That is a great question, and so applicable to what I'm doing right now, because 2 groups I'm working with are in the same boat. They are starting from the ground up on planned giving, and part of it is like what I was saying, that people are talking about it now, maybe not before. So the first thing is, do you have any people already who've made a planned gift to your organization? Do you know? You have. So the organizations I've worked with, you may not want to do this, but have created a recognition society for for people, if they inform you of their plans, and also respecting their anonymity. But then you just put anonymous as one of your donors, but set that recognition society up. Now, I'm not saying create a logo I'm saying just get it out there, right? Just say, if you make a gift to the Retired Racehorse Project, you will get, you will be recognized if you choose to be as part of the Legacy Society. But don't get bogged down into, we got to have a logo, and we got to have a brand, and we got to just do it, okay? Then, if you need to go back and meet brand standards and everything, I'm a big fan of that too, so go back. But then you can start simply, and this is basic, and it's easy, and it's free when it comes to sending. If you're sending direct mail pieces, have a check mark that says, I wish to include your organization in my estate plans, or I have already included organization in my estate plans. Have a checkbox, but then have a way to follow up. So when you get that $25 gift in the mail at the holidays, and it's from that person who's given 25 years for the last 25, or $25 for the last 25 years, guess what? Those are the highest likelihood people who will make a planned gift, who will put you in their will. They check that box, I've included in my estate plans. You can call them, you can thank them, you can begin recognizing them if they so choose, and you can begin cultivating them. Make sure that their wishes are honored. Do they want to give in their estate plans for a general fund, for the general fund? Is it, if they give you $100,000 in their will, do they just want you to use it? Or do they want it to go to a specific program you're doing? Do they want it to be endowed? But that checkbox, going back to the basics of that checkbox, it gives you a reason to follow up. Now, one way that an organization I'm working with, starting from the ground up, we are going to create in-house, just on demand. It doesn't have to be fancy, but we're going to create on demand something they can print and put in with some of their direct mail pieces. And it's going to be about the Legacy Society. And it's going to have basic language that you frankly can get from anywhere, and it's free. So you don't have to go and buy, a package of 250 brochures at $2 a pop to put in all your direct mail pieces. You can do like a 1-page, or even a third of the page, to drop into your direct mail pieces and just introduce the Legacy Society. You'll want to make sure you have in your database a way of tracking, and then just go from there. If you have the money, and if you have the data on your donors to know who to send to, you may not want to send a planned giving mailing to someone who's 25. But you may when they're 45, because they may be thinking about their will, they may have children, they may be thinking about their legacy, and it's not too soon at that point. Not to date myself, but I've started getting planned giving pieces from my university, and have for several years now. I'm not offended because I do this work. I know why they're putting it in there, but if you have that level of data to drill down to, you'll save some money by not putting a lot of mailings out there to people that it doesn't apply to. Does this help? Is this what?
Yeah, I think that's very helpful.
Okay. There's a lot more, I think, but that's kind of the basics, I would say. One of the organizations I'm working with, they're putting it in their budget next year to do a specific mailing, and they're going to look at people who, they don't have ages. It's not like a college where they can kind of guess how old the people are in their database. They're looking at number of donors who've given at $25 over the last 10 years. And then, people above that level, they're not going to send it to people board members or people that it would be better to have a conversation with. They're sending it to the modest donors who may just be thinking about it. This particular organization received an unknown gift, a 6-figure gift recently, because a woman who'd been giving annually a very modest gift left them in her estate plans. So sometimes it's not the people of high net worth that are making those sorts of gifts. had a mentor who was in his 90s. He passed away a few years ago, but when I was talking about starting a legacy program in a previous job before I started consulting, he said, Jessica, start simple. It is easy to get bogged down in all of these opportunities for people to give back. He said, start simple. Start with wills, then talk about annuities, but start with wills. So that will forever stick with me. He was a brilliant man.
That's great. Does anyone have any other questions for Jessica? Bev. I'm going to pass you the mic so everyone who's watching online can hear.
I just have a small specific question. We update our database, and if somebody hasn't donated in 3 years, we take them off the list. Is 3 years too short a time?
Have you given them a chance to opt out?
No.
Okay. 3 years isn't a long time, because 3 years I may forget, or I may not have received the mail. I think taking a hard look at your database every year even is a good idea, because you don't want to waste money.
Right.
But 3 years, maybe. I have worked with an organization that did 3 years, but they gave an opt-out. They sent one last opt-out piece, and they evaluated for 3 years.
Okay, cool, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, anybody else have any other questions?
I can leave some business cards here if you want. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jessica C. Hastings. If you want to look me up on LinkedIn and we can connect. I have business cards too. Not very many people exchange those anymore, but I have some I can leave here, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. Okay. I find Jessica to be such a good resource because she is outside of the Thoroughbred Aftercare sphere. So she gets a lot of different perspectives on the same challenges we all face. So I highly encourage, if anybody has any questions or she is a consultant for philanthropy. So if they want to pick someone's brain about how you're doing, what else you could be doing with your fundraising program, she is an amazing resource. So I highly recommend her.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, since we're running a bit ahead, and I know everybody's been zooming around all day, let's take a quick 5 to 10 minute break. If you guys need to run down to get a refreshment or use a restroom or check in with people, you can do that now, and then we'll meet back in, let's say, 10 minutes. Thank you.